Trump had his shindig down in Florida at the weekend and earned what is an astronomical amount of money for one event. But actually, Joe Biden is well ahead of Donald Trump in the finance stakes.
What he said about individual states is important, isn't it? And a little bit surprising to some people, Alastair.
That's right. We've been waiting now for a number of weeks for Donald Trump to give his position on abortion. It's one of the main key election issues going into the rest of this year and the election in November. As I said, we've been waiting, and there have been reports over the last few weeks that he was going to come out in favour of perhaps a 15 or 16-week national ban, so abortion to be banned after that point, apart from in certain circumstances. So this is quite a departure from what we were expecting. This is essentially going with what the Supreme Court decided in a couple of years ago now, when it scrapped Roe v. Wade, which is essentially to push responsibility back to the individual states, the 50 states, and for them to decide what the law is in their own areas. And what we've seen is at least 21, depending on how you look at it in many ways, but at least 21 states have restricted abortion quite dramatically, many of them banning it outright. What a lot of pro-life groups were hoping was that Donald Trump would come out and support an all-out ban on abortion at a national level, which hasn't happened. And he's sort of kicked the bucket down the road a little bit, or kicked the can down the road a little bit, because by saying it's up to the state to decide, it sort of absolves him, if you like, of having to make a national position for when he gets back in November, if that happens.
So is it? I mean, I don't want to give the man too much credit, but is it a slightly more kind of tempered position, and therefore, should we really note that?
Well, I think what he's trying to do in many respects is to have his cake and eat it, as they say. He's saying, for all the states, all the largely Republican states that want to ban abortion, he's saying that's up to you guys. But he also knows that abortion bans aren't particularly popular with voters across the board. Every time the various states have had a referenda on abortions in the last few months, and every time they do, the most pro-choice option on that ballot has ended up winning. So, on the one hand, he's saying to Republican politicians in deeply red states, look, you ban abortion if you want, but at the same time, he's saying, to the vast majority in the states who favour a more liberal approach, you can do whatever you like in your states. Whether it'll work politically is a different issue. I mean, you'll still have tight restrictions in places like Florida and Texas, but you won't have a federal system. And President Biden, for example, has taken the opposite stance. He said he's in favour of a federal law on abortion that would reinstate Roe v. Wade.
Let's talk about the money that Trump has pouring into his coffers. He raised £40 million, $50.5 million at a Florida fundraiser over the weekend. It's an astonishing amount of money, Alastair, and it's almost double the amount that Joe Biden has managed to rake in, isn't it?
Well, not quite. So Joe Biden had an event in New York about 10 days ago where he was on stage with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, his sort of big set-piece fundraiser last month. And at that point, Joe Biden raised about $25 million from that event. As you say, Trump had his shindig down in Florida at the weekend and earned what is an astronomical amount of money for one event. But actually, Joe Biden is well ahead of Donald Trump in the finance stakes. Joe Biden in February rated about £90 million all in, compared to about £50 million for Trump. So, and also Donald Trump has got huge costs. He's got his legal cases. He's had to fight a Republican primary campaign as well. So even though it was a really good night in terms of money for Donald Trump, the overall position, if you like, the financial league tables, Biden's well ahead.
Okay. Where's Melania, Alastair?
So Melania has been sort of fairly reluctant, I think it's fair to say, to join the Trump campaign. I was actually at Mar-a-Lago about a month ago when on Super Tuesday, and she was a no-show then. I think she's sort of got the message, if you like. She turned up to the thing at the weekend, and she's been a bit more present. She was another event at Mar-a-Lago a couple of weeks ago. So whether it's willingly or not, I think she's being persuaded to come out on the campaign trail a bit.
Yeah, she does have that smile where it's impossible to tell whether or not she's having a good time. Alastair,
I'd be willing to bet.
Yeah.
Which way?
Lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Look, this issue obviously touches the lives and the future of so many people individually, but broadly as an issue, Meg, abortion rights. How big an X factor is this in this coming presidential election?
That's kind of unknown at this point, although I think that the candidates themselves would both argue that it is going to play a relatively significant role. Remember, here in America, after the Dobbs decision came down, after that court decision from the Supreme Court that took away the federal guarantee to abortion back in 2022, that really ramped up attention on abortion-related issues leading into the congressional elections and the gubernatorial elections that November. Now we're in this cycle again ahead of a presidential vote. And in the 2 years almost that have happened since the Dobbs decision came down, we have seen a lot of states really taking action to restrict abortion in some cases and also to codify it in other places. And so arguably, one would think that now we're in a different election cycle ahead of another vote, this time for the presidency, as well as all of those congressional races on top of that. We would think that voters, again, are looking at that landscape, looking at these candidates, and now for the first time able to really make presidential candidate choices since the whole landscape really changed with the Dobbs decision.
Right, and as you say, that decision taking away the nationwide right to abortion, how has that played so far for Donald Trump? Has it worked in his favor in the race for the White House?
This has been a difficult issue for Donald Trump to navigate. As you point out, and in that video that he unveiled earlier today, he was quick to say, look, the 3 Supreme Court justices whom I appointed are the ones that overturned Roe, or the ones that issued that Dobbs decision, and you all have me to thank for that. He was quick to take credit for that. But simultaneously, on the other side of that coin, it's the conversation about, should there be a federal ban? Should there be a number of weeks set at the federal level after which abortion is no longer allowed? That has been difficult for Donald Trump. And he's had a lot of people on the most conservative end of the spectrum saying, yes, absolutely, this is something that we need to do. And here are the markers that we agree upon. And in the GOP primary, which he clearly has won at this point, that was a huge conversation space for a lot of these candidates. But there's always also been that theory of needing to look forward past the primary on Donald Trump's part, assuming that he were to win it. How would he navigate that against Joe Biden on the Democratic side? So it's been difficult. He has never until today said definitively how he felt concretely about a federal ban, and he is receiving some criticism from conservatives and other pro-abortion restriction groups who are saying they don't like what he had to say.
And what about independents and women voters? How have they reacted to this so far?
I think we're still going to be seeing the ramifications for that sector of voters. Clearly, there are women who feel strongly on both sides of this issue. A lot of folks would assume that for women, they would be more pro-choice, but that's not necessarily the case at all. There are women who feel strongly that abortion should not be something that's under consideration. But in terms of those independent voters, the ones who are in the middle, if this is an issue important to them, I think that we could perhaps see this swaying some minds for those who are kind of waiting to see if they feel strongly one way or the other, waiting to see where Donald Trump landed on it. But with him saying, I don't think that there should be a federal restriction, that could actually open him up to some of those voters who had been kind of weighing their options between him and President Joe Biden.
All right, Meg Kinnard at AP, thank you. Now let's get the thoughts of Karen Middleton, who's president of Cobalt Advocates. That's a reproductive rights organization in Colorado. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. What did you make of what you heard from Donald Trump?
You know, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. And so knowing that he put those Supreme Court justices on the court, he will say what he needs to say in order to try to win hearts and minds. So I don't think that it is it's not a true statement. It's a statement that polls well, and he knows that voters across the country do not agree with banning abortion, and he is playing to that larger population in order to try to win this year.
Right, but in that case, you would argue he's taken the wrong route here. He's taken the electorally disadvantageous route in a presidential election.
Well, if you think about it, what we're going to see in the next month is the state of Florida, which is one of the largest states that is about to ban abortion after 6 weeks and is going to create another catastrophic wave of people accessing reproductive health care, accessing abortion. And nearly every southern state has banned abortion. And so I think that we're going to have a whole new wave, like we did after Dobbs, of stories of people having issues, having challenges, having catastrophic tales to tell that is going to work in favor of a Joe Biden presidency in 2024.
What has been the impact across the republic of the change that has taken place? Are women seeking an abortion crossing state lines? Is that an option?
They are absolutely crossing state lines, and Colorado is one of the states. We have a shield law, we have protections, and you can come to the state for care from any other state. We have been absolutely overwhelmed by the flood of people coming from Texas, another large population state that has had a near total ban since before Dobbs. What we are seeing is we have adjusted, but the numbers continue to grow. We have people coming from all over the country, and you are seeing states continue to try to ban abortion. We had a situation in Alabama where IVF was being threatened because of a personhood measure. We even had a vote taken by Arizona Republicans at the state level that said they did not want to protect access to birth control. So I think people see this slippery slope. One is people can't get the care they need in their state. And the folks that are anti-abortion, it's not like they're supporting the full spectrum of birth care and child care. They are now going after things like birth control and reproductive technologies. And it's really had a devastating impact. And I think that is why so many voters are going to take a hard look at this again in November's election.